Yes!
Now, I was in a party with about 4 or 5 other friends the other day, and I proposed we play some PvP since nobody was in the mood to raid at the time, and I had a few amazingly rolled weapons that I wanted to test out in Crucible. We ended up playing for about 2 hours, only losing about 2 or 3 games, and I really began to realize the exact reason why I very seldom step foot inside the Crucible. You see, I personally never been fond of Destiny 2's PvP. As a matter of fact, I can flat out confirm I never liked it as a whole. Yes, I realized that the timing to kill is much faster than what it was before. We got 6v6 now, the weapons feel more powerful, etc. None of that is news, but I can't help to notice that there's still some discernibly glaring issues with PvP. So back in year 1, PvP was 4v4 across the board. The TTK was slower than molasses, so the only guaranteed way to win gunfights was the team shoot. At this time, there were probably more legitimate Bigfoot sightings than 1v1 gunfights in the Crucible because weapon damage was so low. And even if you eventually found yourself in a 1v1 gunfight, the rest of the enemy team will focus fire you and you'd be dead within a blink of an eye. It was almost like Bungie was trying to make all PvP game modes competitive, air quotes. But the entire community went on a tirade about how slow and boring PvP was, and I 100% agree. Because of this, I literally avoid the Crucible like the plague, because in my experience, I always seem to play dramatically worse when I solo queue. But when I have a full team of 6 or 5, I actually feel safe. Being able to communicate with my team makes the whole world of difference and seem to have 100% jurisdiction on how well I play. It's simply a lot more consoling to play with people you know and or people you can actually relay information to during a match. Then again, this may be something that only I deal with, so let me know if you can relate. Alright, so now we can talk about the glaring issues I briefly mentioned previously. Despite the fact that the Crucible has been, for the most part, turned right side up, I still see a lot of year 1 filth lingering in the Crucible. For one, the time to kill is actually faster than what it was in D1 when you think about how many weapons in this game can roll damage buff perks like Kill Clip and Rampage, which only a select few weapons could do in D1. But despite that, people still stick together like the human centipede and don't try to make solo plays to get the leg up on the enemy team. And it's almost safe to say that their playstyle and mind state is still stuck in year 1. Now, I 100% realize that it's ill-advised to not play as a team, and it's counterintuitive to try to lone wolf all the time, but that isn't my point. I'm simply saying that since the TTK is so fast now, you have the freedom of playing how you want to play, not how Bungie wanted you to play in year 1. When I'm in the Crucible, I break away from the team to go for flanks when my team has the enemies aggro to them. That way I can get some easy picks because the enemy team is so fixated on my teammates, they don't realize that I'm there. By the time that they do, they're dead. But I still find myself in situations where people are so unconfident to do their own thing that I commonly find myself in 1v2 and 1v3 situations. Admittedly, I very seldom run into the whole team, which happened far too frequently in year 1. But when I do, it's probably either horrible luck and or bad timing or my own fault for running into the enemy spawn. Now, this is Bungie's fault for setting a horrible precedent in year 1 of D2 because I don't ever recall team shooting being so deeply embedded into the PvP culture in D1 outside of Trials of Osiris, where it was 100% imperative since this was the most teamwork oriented game mode in the entire game. Now we in an era where players are stuck in their old ways because, like I said previously, team shooting wasn't even a thing in D1, and the entire player base wouldn't have ever thought about mandatorily implementing that particular playstyle into their own playstyle until D2 came out. Now, it doesn't help that D2's Crucible maps were designed from the ground up for the original playstyle of this game. For the exception of the D1 throwback maps, most of the maps in D2 were pretty much compacted and have incredibly tight corridors, which explains why shotguns are so dominant right now. Yeah, shotguns have the ease of use thing going for them, but they're clearly the go-to weapons to use due to how small these maps are. Instead of updating these maps to accommodate for the fact that 6v6 is officially a thing in Destiny 2, Bungie just said forget it. We'll just cram 12 players with shotguns on a map that was originally designed for 8 players with 2 primary weapons. Nowadays, if you don't have a shotgun crammed down your throat 40 times in a match, you're either getting spawn killed or spawning next to an enemy. Bungie needs to either expand these maps so they'll be more quick play friendly or just remove them from quick play as a whole and replace them with bigger maps. Now, I'll be 100% honest when I say the competitive is a huge sweat fest and a headache to play 99.9% of the time. But when I was grinding for Luna's Howl, I realized that it was much easier to control the flow and pace of each match. Why? Well, like I said previously, these maps were designed for 4v4. Competitive is 4v4, has a slower respawn time, so you don't actually have to worry about any of the inadequacies present in quick play. However, people will still use what's commonly referred to as the most powerful and or cheap weapons in the game, so there's that too. Despite that, Competitive has a much more predictable pace because it plays very similarly to how Bungie designed PvP in year 1. Makes sense? A lot of people were super excited when a new weapon loadout system update rolled out because it was believed that sniping would return to the crucible. Well, without repeating everything I just said, look at the size of the maps in this game and tell me how good of a time you will have with sniping without playing passively the entire game. Seriously, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but these maps are so small. It's the least incentivized thing to do unless you're playing competitive or one of the bigger maps like Equinox or Eternity. However, I'm in no way, shape, or form implying that sniping isn't possible because it definitely is. I'm simply stating that you have to work a little bit harder than somebody running around with a shotgun. Now, speaking of those maps, Bungie would easily be able to get away with giving us maps similarly sized, and most, if not all, the problems that I mentioned before would cease to exist. Literally, you wouldn't have to worry about spawning next to enemies and or getting spawn killed. There'd be enough space for everybody to run around and play how they please. Overall, bigger maps promote more freedom, and I, for one, am tired of feeling so overwhelmed most of the time when I play quick play. But anyways, that does it for this one, everybody. If you enjoyed this video, drop me a like. If you're new to my neck of the woods, subscribe to the channel for more elite gaming content. With that being said, 1LHD is over and out. Y'all take it easy.
Yes!